Well, now, that was a fantastic meal. I must say, I've not had a meal like that in quite some time. I'd really want to thank you all for allowing us to eat such a fine plate of food with you folks. Bo Ivy dabbed at his mouth with a napkin, which he then tossed casually on the plate in front of him. The remains of the roast chicken, peas, and mashed potatoes caught it and immediately began soaking it with leftover gravy. He finished the beer next to the plate, put down the empty glass, and belched. Then he slid the chair back and stood up, reaching his full 6.5 feet. Cherie, did you get enough to eat, hon? He stretched as he stood. They had been on the road for more than a week, and it felt good to stretch. We gotta get motoring, and I don't want you complaining about how hungry you are. Cherie looked over at him from the living room, smiled. I'm good, sweetie. Let's just finish this off and get on the road. Are you sure? We can sleep here once we're done down here, if you want to. Cherie shook her head. Nah, I don't like sleeping here once it's done. I want to get moving. Bo shrugged. Well, then, guess we better get on with it. Bo reached into his pocket and came out with the switchblade. He had owned this particular knife with the blue handle since he was 14. He was 21 now. In his left pocket was the .38 Cherie had taken from her father once they had finished killing her entire family, then got on the road. In his back pocket was the pistol he had taken from the man currently tied up and gagged on the easy chair in the living room, looking at him with wide, terrified eyes, mumbling against the gag. Mr. Jameson. The name of the family had been on the mailbox at the end of the road, right by the driveway. Cherie had told him how hungry she was, and he admitted he was too. She also told him she really liked the house. They were getting good at this now, though, and had Mr. and Mrs. Jameson, their 16-year-old daughter and 11-year-old son, gagged and bound in the living room in less than 20 minutes. Sorry for interrupting your dinners, folks, but I do appreciate the food, Mrs. Jameson. Bo said, giving the bound and terrified family his most winning smile. I do appreciate your hospitality. He had more guns from the home, too. A pump-action shotgun Mr. Jameson had stashed in a closet. There was a deer hunting rifle, too. Bo and Cherie had collected quite a few since they started traveling about 2 weeks ago. Each place they visited, they seemed to find guns. It was amazing traveling in this part of the country, Bo mused. He pushed the button, and the knife snapped open. Now, Mr. Jameson, this is probably going to hurt, but just for a few seconds. Bo leaned in and quickly slit the man's throat from one side to the other, then back again, twisting the knife so the arteries opened and sprayed across the living room. The man began to kick his legs, twist and turn, gurgle, and make noise. Bo smiled as he watched him. This was always the fun part. The last seconds, the weird pleading in the eyes. Cherie, please take care of the young missus. Bo commanded. Cherie turned the double-barreled shotgun toward the 16-year-old. This gun they had gotten from the first house they had visited right after killing her family. It was her favorite because the homeowner had cut it down slightly so his wife could use it. Cherie pulled the trigger. The side of the young girl's head vanished in a spray of blood and bone which splattered against the white couch. I love it when it splatters like that, baby, she cried out. Mr. Jameson's eyes had started to go blank. Bo held the gaze a moment longer, but he forced himself to turn away. There was work to do. He saw the young boy already trying to crawl away. The mother screamed against her gag, her eyes on them, then at her daughter's body. Shut her up, Cherie, Bo said. Cherie put the barrel of the gun against Mrs. Jameson's chest and fired, squealing with glee when her chest burst apart and more blood went flying. The girl really did love all of the blood. They had had sex in her family's blood right after they finished killing her younger brother 2 weeks ago. It was amazing. Since then, it was like they couldn't get enough. Sorry, young sir, Bo said, grabbing the boy by his hair. You ain't crawling away. Bo raised the knife again. Then he brought it down. He brought it down many, many times. Cherie climbed off of Bo, putting her panties back on as she collapsed in the passenger seat. The SUV was huge, and they had so much room. She had jumped on him the moment they transferred all the guns to the back of the vehicle and got inside. They were still in the Jamesons' garage, both covered in blood. Bo had left streaks of blood from his hands and her hair. "That was one of the best yet," Cherie said, the feral smile still on her face. "The looks in their faces, they get so scared of us. I wish we didn't gag them because I love when they beg." "Guess that's where we differ, little lady," Bo said, tucking himself back into his jeans. He started the engine and backed out of the driveway. "I just like the quiet. I like the looks in their eyes, but I can do without the verbal pleading. Hey, should we see if our story's still on the news? Turn on the radio. Find a news update." Cherie turned on the radio and flipped to the AM band. She let the digital numbers roll through lots of political talk until they came to a news broadcast where the first thing she heard was her own name. "Hey, there I am!" she cried in delight. "The police are still warning anyone in the states of Nevada, Arizona, and New Mexico to be on the lookout of Bo Lively and his girlfriend Cherie Berlin. They are to be considered armed and extremely dangerous." Cherie laughed. "They just don't know how true they are, right, hun?" "Right as rain." The broadcast continued. "It's believed the couple murdered Berlin's entire family and went on the run. Police found her home outside of Las Vegas left as a bloody murder scene 2 weeks ago. It's believed the very next night, Lively murdered a gas station attendant, stealing money as he did so. The couple are wanted on 5 counts of first-degree murder and stolen property." Cherie laughed. "They don't even have the numbers right." Bo nodded. "What are we up to now?" "Well, there was my family, so that's 4. Then the guy in the gas station, so that's 5. We killed the young couple on the side of the road, so 7. Then we just offed 4 more, so we're up to 11. Whoa!" They laughed, and Bo stepped on the gas. The SUV took a moment to get up to speed, but soon they were flying across the highway into the night. Two hours later, Bo found a spot far off the main road beneath a large overgrowth of trees. By then, Cherie was ready to go again, so they did. Once they finished, she curled up in the back seat and fell asleep. Bo stayed up, smoking a cigarette, staring out into the darkness and the night. He smiled at the darkness. He had long ago befriended it. How the hell had he gotten here? It had all happened so fast. The moment he met Cherie, his world had changed. All of the rats and spiders on his head quieted down. For once, he was sure he had found someone who understood him. Bo leaned back against the driver's seat and closed his eyes. He'd been working at a local mechanic shop. Just around the corner was the trailer park Cherie Berlin called home. It was her father who brought her over to the garage just 3 weeks ago. He needed repairs done on the car and knew the owner. Cherie, all of 15, immediately saw Bo. Bo saw her too, and he gave her his most winning smile. "Well, hello there," she said, chewing on her gum and smiling right back at him. "You new around here?" "I just started here about 3 days ago." It was just that simple. Although he watched her father grab her by the arm and drag her away, she was soon sneaking away from the trailer, showing up at the garage to talk to Bo. "I want to get out of here," she said one night. "Why?" "Look at this place. It's all shit. My life is shit. My parents are shit." Bo stood up and wiped grease from his hands. "Why do you say that?" "You have no idea what it's like to be with my father, what kind of man he is. But despite all that, don't you just want to see what else is out there?" Bo played dumb. "Out where?" She punched him in the shoulder. "The rest of the world. There's an entire planet out there, and we're stuck in the middle of Nevada. There's literally nothing here. Flat, boring, desert." "Well, we get the hand we're dealt, and we have to play it." Cherie came in close, her hand very near his belt line. I think you can just change the hand, call for a new game. I don't have enough money, and I bet you don't either. Beau whispered. What would we live on? Cherie stepped away from him. Don't worry about it. I can get us money. It was a stupid and innocent conversation, but Beau couldn't get it out of his head. He'd come from a small town in Montana. His own father was a raging alcoholic, and he focused most of the rage on him and his mother. When the man had nearly beaten his mother to death, Beau stepped in and fought back. He was sure his father was still alive when he left the house, but not 100%. He'd been on the run for over a year, ending up here, finding a job because he had some skill in fixing engines. It was hardly the life he dreamed of. It filled his head with anger and rage. If they had asked him, Beau might have admitted he enjoyed hurting his father. He liked hurting things in general, especially living things. Beau didn't see Cherie again for 3 days. He was starting to worry when, on the 4th day, he'd been shutting down the garage, closing up, when she came running around the corner. She ran straight into his arms and he realized she was crying. When he lifted her chin up, he saw she had a black eye. Who did this to you? My father, she cried. They made love the first time that very night in the garage office. As they lay there holding each other, Cherie told him how she had violence within her too. She wanted to kill her parents, wanted to burn the entire town down. She had been hurting animals for years, something he related to. I want them dead. I want to get away and kill them all. He comes into my room at night, you know. My dad. He has been since I was 11. Beau felt the rage build then. Something he had felt before, of course. It had been brewing within him since he was a kid. The only time the fury subsided was when he beat his father. Now, he was sure he was going to kill Cherie's dad. It turned out her father had a lot of guns. Sure, he had a shitty job with shitty pay, but he sure knew how to spend money on guns instead of food, clothing, and a home for his family. For the next several days, Beau and Cherie spent as much time as they could together. They fucked and they planned. When the night came, Beau knocked on the family's door. He had Cherie's father's pistol in his belt. When her mother opened the door, he put it right in her face. The rest was a blur. Beau beat her father with the pistol until his face was more blood and pulp than flesh and bone. Cherie stabbed her mother to death, slicing her open and tearing out her insides. Beau put a plastic bag on her little brother's head and tightened it with a zip tie he'd brought from the garage. Cherie's sister went the same way. They took the guns and ran. Cherie's father's car did nicely for a time. When they stopped to get gas the next night, Beau decided it was time to kill again, plus they needed more money. The look on the attendant's face made him smile just thinking about it. So scared, pleading, as if he was sure Beau would change his mind. He kept the look on his face right up until Beau put a bullet through his forehead. It pissed Cherie off she missed out on the killing, but she was also proud of Beau. They drove and drove. Beau guessed they were out of Nevada and into Arizona by the next night. No sooner had they crossed the border when they came across a young couple stalled on the side of the road. They were nice, and Beau, with his mechanical skills, soon had the motor running. Cherie stabbed the girl to death on the side of the road, the blood spattering the windshield. Beau knocked the young man down and kicked in his skull with his boots. Then, to be sure they were dead, he put a bullet in each of their heads. They took the couple's car and pocketed the pistol in the glove compartment. Right now, Beau guessed they were in New Mexico. They had managed to go for some time before the need in both of them had gotten too great. Once you started, he mused as he stared into the night, the need just kept coming back. The need to see their faces. Cherie was right, there was something to it, but her need was even greater than his. On the news, they quickly became a sensation. Unfortunately, this meant it plastered their faces all over the television. This made things tricky, but it also meant they had to keep going to people's homes for food and to get more money. And guns. Always, they found guns. Beau discovered the South was a great place for a guy who loved guns. Sure, he had beaten a couple of people to death and stabbed another, but he loved the look in their eyes when you put a pistol in someone's face. He wondered sometimes where they were going. They had no proper plan. Beau and Cherie talked vaguely about trying to get south of the border and find a place to live down in South America. However, getting across the border was going to be almost impossible with their faces everywhere. Beau guessed they'd probably end up dead in a shootout with police or something close to that, perhaps caught. Then there would be a trial and executions. Beau leaned his front seat back. Behind him, Cherie breathed heavily as she slept. He turned to look at her face. She was such an angel when she was asleep. He worried at times he'd wake up to find she had a gun in his face or perhaps his own knife to his throat. She'd probably find it the ultimate kink to fuck him while he bled out beneath her. With this comforting thought in mind, Beau closed his eyes. He tumbled down a long, dark, dreamless hole into his slumber. 3 days later, they finally crossed the state line and found themselves in the panhandle of Texas. The world was suddenly very flat. The sky was bright, the air was hot. For the past 3 days, they had been driving down some of the roughest roads they had ever seen before. Twice, they had come across police patrols and had to hide the car while waiting them out. The news was still all about them. The car from the 2 hitchhikers had been found, and then the bodies a day later. No one had yet found the massacre in the Jameson house. "We need to find another house," Cherie said on the morning of the 3rd day. "I gotta get out of this fucking car." "You just want to kill someone again," Beau chided. Cherie shrugged and gave him a teasing smile. "I am what I am. You know how it makes me horny." "I have never met a woman so turned on by blood." Beau laughed, turning left down a gravel road. Beneath them, the bottom of the car was pelted by stones. It was so loud, Cherie turned up the radio. "The couple is still considered armed and very dangerous. If anyone sees them, they are to report them to authorities and not try to take them on themselves." "That's right," Beau shouted out the window. "Don't fuck with us!" Cherie laughed. What Beau had not told Cherie was that he was no longer sure where they were going or where they were. She still believed they were heading to South America, but they had been so far off the main roads even Beau wasn't sure where they were going most of the time. The SUV had a compass built into the rearview mirror, but whether or not it was accurate, he couldn't say. Cherie didn't seem to care. "It feels like we're the only people in the entire world out here," she said, leaning way out the window and closing her eyes, allowing the wind to rush through her hair. Flat. The world was very flat. Grass and bare batches were everywhere. Sometimes there would be clusters of trees. They would see ranches set far back from the road, with horses or other animals grazing along the grass. None of the ranches appealed to Cherie, though. She wanted something bigger. "I wish we could find a castle," she said. "Might be hard to find in Texas, or New Mexico, or wherever the hell we are." He turned south again as the sun descended. Cherie was quiet, and the radio couldn't pick up any stations. He could tell she was getting restless. They had to find some place to land, he thought. If they didn't, she'd get angry and maybe turn on him. It was like living with a rattlesnake next to him in the passenger seat. Beau turned again, this time heading east down another gravel road. Behind him, he saw the cloud of dust the SUV kicked up behind him. How far could the cops see that? It worried him. "Hey, look!" Cherie's yell snapped him out of his reverie. He looked where she was pointing and laughed. Son of a bitch. Maybe 5 miles off to the right was a hill. A goddamn hill in the middle of the flattest part of the country Beau had ever seen, surrounded by thick trees which also looked completely out of place here. A stone wall surrounded the home and a vast tract of land. Behind the stone wall, visible just over the tops of the impossible trees, were spires and peaks. A goddamn castle. "We have to go there!" Cherie clapped her hands and giggled. "You bet your ass." Beau began making his way over towards the immense house. As they got closer, they caught different glimpses of the building. It was all stone, with slitted windows. Some of the windows appeared made of stained glass like a church. Beau had to keep reminding himself they had taken no drugs, and both of them were seeing it. How the hell did this place get way out here? He asked over and over again. It's like a dream. Cherie kept her head out the window, a dreamy look on her face. Maybe we can live here. I could be a princess. Beau laughed. It was impossible. An impossible dream, of course, but he would let her have her fantasy. You're always my princess, sweetheart. They finally reached the stone fence and discovered an iron gate at the main driveway. The road going past the castle was gravel, but the driveway looked like smooth blacktop. The gate was imposing, but it stood open, as if to welcome visitors. Beau brought the SUV to a halt right across the driveway, which wound its way into the copse of trees. From this vantage point, they could see more of the building, although much of it was still hidden by the trees. It was the biggest house Beau had ever witnessed in person. It really is a goddamn castle, baby. He realized he was whispering, speaking in hushed, reverent tones. Do we just drive right up to the place? Cherie asked, her own voice hushed. A place as big as that, they might have servants and shit. We have no idea how many people are in the place. There could be 10 people in there. No, we should find a place down the road and hide the car. Cherie smiled and bounced up and down in the seat. We could be a newlywed couple lost in the night and had a breakdown. Beau leaned in and kissed her. You read my goddamn mind. They laughed and Beau shifted into drive. Beau drove down the road until they were maybe a mile or so away from the vast house. They could see the soft glow of the lights from the castle in the sky along the horizon, but not the house itself. Beau pulled over to the side and they got out, walked around the back of the SUV, and opened the back. What should we bring? Cherie leaned into the back and studied the collection of guns. We should bring knives, of course, but no rifles or shotguns. Beau leaned in and grabbed 2 pistols. One was a small automatic, which he stuck in his ankle holster. He tucked his switchblade into this front pocket. Then he got the revolver and made sure the chambers were loaded. Cherie grabbed a small automatic, which she tucked away in her jeans. She also grabbed a small flick knife. When she was done, she smiled at Beau, and he leaned in to kiss her. Let's see what this crazy castle in the middle of nowhere is all about, Beau said. They walked back the way they had come, the darkness creeping around them. The sun still painted the sky in the west, but the orb itself was below the horizon. The horizon still held a yellow glow, which slowly descended into darker and darker colors the lower one looked. Beau craned his head up and saw the stars were out, dazzled again by how amazingly bright they were out here in the middle of nowhere. It didn't take them long to get to the open gate. The 2 drifters hooked a left and felt the change from the gravel road to the smooth pavement. Beau kept his eyes ahead, scanning left and right. Cherie was bursting with excitement, nearly skipping, but Beau couldn't quite get excited about things in the same way. He felt like maybe this wasn't real. Maybe they had pushed into another dimension or traveled through a wormhole along the back roads here and were now in England or Scotland. Nothing about this hill or the trees or this castle looked like it belonged. Some force had transported it from some other place, perhaps out of their own imaginations, or Cherie's childish dreams, and placed here. Where there were castles, there were wizards, kings, and sometimes trolls. Beau had read a lot in his days, traveling aimlessly around the country. Many nights he laid awake on bedbug-infested mattresses and flea-bag hotels or motels, reading tattered books to keep himself sane. He loved the tales of hobbits, wizards, and demonic villains. They followed the driveway, first slightly to the right, then to the left. Trees were thick along the pavement, but they could gradually see more and more of the house. It was huge, with many peaks and spires. Lights blazed up and down the towers. Beau had seen nothing like it before. What is this house doing here? He asked aloud. It's amazing. It's a castle, hun. They finally emerged from the long driveway to another paved area. The left was a large wooden door, which could only be the front door. It was the one thing which really looked imposing. No porch light, no window, just an imposing door. I guess that's the door. Bo pointed. I guess we just knock? We're in trouble. Cherie rehearsed. She batted her eyelashes. We need to use your phone, please. No reception out here, nowhere to turn, please. And the Academy Award goes to? Bo teased. When they reached the door, it took a moment for them to realize where the doorbell was. Bo reached out and twisted a little switch. Inside, distantly, they heard a bell ring. Cherie was so taken with this old-fashioned bell, she gave it a twist too. Let's not get them angry, sweetie, Bo whispered. Cherie bounced on the balls of her feet. Bo wondered if she was dreaming of a princess in a long gown coming down an equally long staircase, perhaps with a pointed cap and a long veil trailing afterward. The time they stood there grew, and Bo shifted from one foot to the other. He was tempted to ring the bell again, but he didn't want the people inside to be irritated with him from the start. Just as he was about to give up and do it anyway, there was a sound from the other side of the wooden door. Slowly, it creaked open. Hello? The voice was female, and Bo realized there was a hint of an accent. Funny, he thought, how just one small word could reveal so much about a person. Hi there, Bo said, putting on his most charming and winning smile. I apologize for ringing your bell at night like this, but our car broke down just up the road there. We can't get any reception on the cell phones, and we saw your lights on. Is there any chance we can use your phone? The door opened further, and a tall, pale woman with dark hair down to her shoulders came into view. She was dressed in a white blouse and a dark skirt. Her clothes looked expensive to Bo, but he didn't know much about these things. I'm so sorry to hear that, she said, looking concerned. James, did you hear that? From within the hallway, hidden back among some shadows, a man appeared. He was dressed in gray pants and a white dress shirt. He had short, well-combed black hair. I did. What a shame. Yes, of course, you can come in. The man opened the door further. Inside was a thick carpet and soft lighting. The foyer hallway opened into a large interior room with what appeared to be a balcony overlooking it. The sense of hugeness about the place only increased as Bo and Cherie took their first hesitant steps inside. Thank you, Bo said. Sorry to interrupt. The dark-haired woman smiled warmly. Not at all. Please, do come in. Bo finally realized they had English accents, which seemed just as out of place as the castle itself. The sensation of having stepped out of the normal reality into another plane of existence hit Bo again. He had read about such things and couldn't help but wonder if he was experiencing it. My name is Rick, Bo lied. This is my wife, Darlene. You live in a castle? Cherie squealed with delight. The young man with dark hair laughed. My name is James. This is my sister Lily. It's not quite a castle, but close. You'll forgive me for asking. Bo looked around, unable to stop himself from gaping in awe at the high ceilings, expensive-looking paintings on the wall, and the seemingly endless marble floors. How in the hell did you find a place like this in Texas? Lily and James laughed again. Lily spoke up first. Well, this entire area was built by our father. He had a job opportunity here in Texas right after we were born. He turned this entire area into a semblance of the English countryside. He built the hill, planted the trees, then he transported our home across the ocean a bit at a time to have it rebuilt here. Bo whistled in appreciation. He felt his palms start to itch, always a sign he wanted to commit violence and rob. It was very tempting to just pull out his gun and shoot these two. The blood would look amazing across the walls and marble floor. Lily and James cast quick glances at one another. We were just about to sit down to dinner, James said. You two look like you've been traveling for a long time. Would you care to join us? We wouldn't mind the company. Beau's instincts kicked and he was about to say no when Cherie squealed in delight again. We'd love to. I've never eaten in a castle before. Hell, I've never even seen such a thing up close. Beau cleared his throat. Well, whatever the wife wants, she gets. If it isn't too much trouble, we'd love to join you. James extended a hand toward the interior of the house. Right this way. We hope you don't mind, but it's just us tonight. We gave the staff the night off. This was good news, Beau thought. Cherie reached out her hand and squeezed his tightly. It had been quite a while since she had been this excited. The group walked into a grand hallway and then into a large room with one wall dominated by a huge painting. It was some guy in a frilly outfit, and Beau had no idea who it was. In front of them was the biggest dining room table he had ever seen. There were flowers and candles there. Overhead was an ornate chandelier. There was food everywhere, too. All sorts of meats, a big pot of soup, and side dishes Beau didn't recognize. Please, have a seat, James said, indicating the table. Lily will get extra plates. Our staff created this magnificent dinner for us before leaving. They always create too much. Would you like some wine? Cherie was already sitting at a place, and she nodded enthusiastically. Beau was cautious, but also sat down next to his girl. He tried to convey to her that something isn't quite right about this. His instincts were honed more than hers. He had spent time in jail, and there were things you picked up there to warn you of danger. James produced 2 glasses, which he sat down in front of them. He poured from a decanter, and rich red wine flowed into the glass. The smell of it intoxicated Beau. Just as James finished, Lily arrived with plates and silverware. She set those down in front of Beau and Cherie. This is a little informal, she admonished herself. Forgive us, we weren't expecting company, but we're so glad you're here. Please, help yourselves. Cherie reached across the table and grabbed chicken off a plate which had been carved into neat slices next to the carcass. She also grabbed potatoes and some sort of vegetable dish. Beau took a sip of his wine. In the past, Beau had tried all sorts of alcohol. Mostly, had they pressed him, he would have said he was a fan of bourbon and whiskey. He had never particularly liked wine, but this wine was something unlike any he had tried before. Bitter, yes, but also smooth, with flavors that linger on his tongue once he swallowed. He took a longer sip. This is the best wine I've ever tasted, he said, and only once the words had left his mouth did he realize he had spoken aloud. Lily and James laughed. The brother and sister sat across the table. James lifted a fork of dark meat into his mouth. He chewed with an odd relish that once again set Beau on edge. To him, it was like watching a predator devour its prey. Beau felt a weird desire to run. There was riches galore around them. If Beau and Cherie were to murder these two right now, just the silverware they were using for their meals would be enough to pay to get them across the border. Beau knew a few people who could get them fake passports. They would get real disguises, which would fool authorities. There were ways to get anywhere if you tried hard enough, and had enough cash. The feeling in his gut was too much to deny. Something about the way the siblings stared at them while Cherie ate and Beau drank. Something was off inside this grand castle, transported brick by brick across the Atlantic and set up in this middle-of-nowhere place in Texas. So, where are you two from? Lily asked, sipping her own wine. Cherie talked with her mouth full. I'm from California, Beau's from New York. We met a few years ago and got married last year. Beau was impressed with her ability to improvise. He knew her well enough to guess this had been the fantasy in her head since she was a little girl. Cherie was the type with Hollywood dreams and thoughts of a dashing prince from a big city coming to take her away to some faraway enchanted land. I work with my hands mostly. Beau extended both palms toward them. Why had he done that? To show them his calluses? I love cars and get by working on them. I'm pretty good. He was talking too much, he chided himself. Beau took another sip of his wine, then reached across to grab a drumstick off the chicken carcass. "That's a skill I wish I had," James admitted. "I am useless with my hands. Father always wanted me to go to college, become a lawyer, or enter politics." Cherie took a large gulp of her wine. She coughed, then laughed. "Excuse me, I'm not used to wine." Beau laughed. "Neither of us are, I guess." "What brings you two to Texas?" Lily asked, an odd light in her eyes, a strange smile hanging on her lips. "We're on a vacation. Well, we never got a chance to have a honeymoon." Cherie filled in the story. Beau let her run with it. "We both got some time off and got into the car, just started driving." Beau turned his head to look around the room, and the colors of the walls, the carpeting, and lights blurred together as he did so. Weird. He had felt like this before. Where had it been? Beau took another bite of the chicken, chewed, swallowed. Cherie ate her food, but she had begun to slow down too. She took another drink of her wine. She turned her head to look at Beau a moment later, a curious expression on her face. "I feel weird," she said. Beau's red alerts went off in his brain. Too late, he thought. It's all too late. You should have run. He stood up suddenly, nearly falling over, his feet caught in the legs of the chair. "What did you do to us?" was what he tried to say. Instead, it came out more like, "What did you do to..." Lily and James looked at each other and smiled. "Whatever do you mean?" James asked. "I think maybe you cannot handle your wine, as you said." Beau tried to reach for his gun as Cherie attempted to stand. She got halfway there, muttered something under her breath, then fell hard to the thick carpet. Beau's fingers wouldn't work, and the world felt as if it had tipped hard to the left. He staggered sideways, the gun tumbled to the ground. "No," he whispered. Then he fell, and darkness took him before he hit the floor. Beau's tongue felt thick and covered in carpeting. He licked his lips. They were dry too. His head pounded like something alive behind his eyes. The world still spun a bit too fast. He tried to talk some more. "What happened?" Slowly, he tried to open his eyes, but the world was too bright. There were dots of color against a brown background in front of him. "What?" he repeated. There was movement behind him. He tried to turn his head, but the world whipped around too wildly, and he turned his head back straight again. Focus, he thought, through the weirdness and muddled feeling. What are the dots of color? Birds. What? He had to expand his vocabulary. So far, he could only seem to say the word what. However, it was the only word he could think of to say. It was a bright orange bird, very dead, held to the wooden wall with barbed wire. Next to it was another bird, this one blue, also held in place with barbed wire. Then another bird, this one just brown and white, also held into place the same way. Now he turned his head to the left and saw more of them all around the room. "Oh, fuck," he whispered. "Do you like my decorations?" The voice made Beau jump. When he did, it was then he realized someone had tied him to a wooden chair. Leather belts held his wrists to the arms of the chair. One belt across his chest and more belts at his wrists. There were more straps across his legs and ankles. The voice was behind him, female. It all came back to Beau in a rush. The weird castle house, the strange brother and sister, the meal and the wine, falling. It was the sister behind him, her English accent strangely muffled. "Let me go. God damn it, I'm gonna fucking kill you. Let me out of here. If you let me go and let Cherie go, we'll just leave. If you hurt me or her, you and your fucking brother are dead." She laughed. He heard footsteps behind him. Where the hell was he? There was a small window way off to the left, letting in a bit of light. Was it morning already? Overhead were exposed wooden beams. The floor was also wood. It was hot. It was an attic. Beau had been in enough of those to know where he was. "You are hardly in a position to make demands." She walked closer to him. He felt her against his right shoulder. "Beau." She leaned down and put her face right into his. However, she was wearing a mask. It was white, stiff, almost looking as if it were made of porcelain. There were 2 slits for her eyes and a slight bump for her nose, but no hole for her mouth. Red dots adorned the cheeks just below each eye. Her long, dark hair cascaded down over the sides of this white face and down her back. "Yes, I checked your wallet, and I knew from the moment I saw you." Beau saw she held his pistol in her right hand. "See, you have nothing to threaten me with." "You're fucking crazy." She walked in front of him. She wore a long, flowing robe covered with a floral design. Now that he was awake, Beau took in more of the room. There were other animals on the walls, also held in place by barbed wire. A squirrel, a cat, a groundhog. Then, over to the right, was something spread out across the wall like a bearskin rug hung up instead of spread out on the floor. Except it wasn't bearskin. Was it a human? Oh, Jesus. Beau strained against the straps. They flexed, but did not give. It was quite a surprise. We have had quite a few visitors over the years. My brother and I welcome them. We feed them. Then we play with them. We seldom get celebrities such as you and Miss Berlin. This is quite the honor. We're very excited." She laughed in a high-pitched way, which made Beau think of a deranged little girl. Where was Cherie? "Where's Cherie?" "Oh, James is playing with her. I always get the boys, he likes the girls. Sometimes we switch. It all depends on how long our playmates like to keep playing." "This is fucked up. Look, just turn us into the police. You can get a reward." Lily laughed. "You're funny. So tell me, what was it like?" Beau was momentarily confused. "What?" "That seems to be your favorite word this morning. Killing all of those people so fast. So many at once. I heard on the news this morning they found an entire family dead today. Of course, they're blaming you. Did you do it?" There seemed little point in lying now. "Yes." "Oh, children, too. James and I have never done such a thing. What is that like?" "It's the most amazing feeling in the world." Why was he telling her this? It was as if he couldn't stop his own tongue from blabbing. "It's like being a god. It's finally having control over the world around you, and when you see the fear in their eyes, it's like being drunk, almost like you can drink it in." Lily nodded. "Yes, I understand." She turned back around, and he couldn't see what she was doing any longer. There was a sort of bench affixed to the wall, and he heard what sounded like metal clinking together. When she faced him again, she held a small silver instrument in her right hand. In a flash, Beau barely registered. She slashed across his face, and he felt the blood run down his cheek before the pain hit. Beau screamed. He tasted blood. Something wet flapped against his cheek. Was it the upper part of his face? "Lovely," Lily said. "I always start with something simple. I want to hear what the screams sound like. You have a lovely scream." "You fucking bitch! I'm gonna kill you. I swear to God, I'm gonna kill you with my bare hands." Lily laughed again, turning back to her table. This time, when she whirled around towards him again, yet another shiny thing flashed in her hand. It was a small plastic box with a clear or reflective top that caught the light. The light from the window caught additional flickers of something inside. "Have you ever had anything under your fingernails before? It hurts so much, like a paper cut." She held the box close to his face. It was a box full of needles and pins. "Let's see how you do with these." Cherie's eyes snapped open. She flinched at the light and immediately knew she was tied down to a table. There were straps across her chest, stomach, and legs, plus her hands were strapped to the sides of the table. She also quickly realized the table below her was metal, and she was just in a bra and panties. Well, good morning. Whose voice was that? She turned her head and saw a man's back, wearing a white shirt, hunched over a table. He wasn't looking at her. She could just barely see the black hair on top of his head. James? It all came crashing back to her in a rush. The castle, the weird brother and sister, the food and the wine. She remembered falling. James, what are you doing? Let me go. James stood up straight, and Cherie realized just how tall he was and how muscular he was beneath his white shirt. He had been wearing an ill-fitting suit across his body the night before. There was some kind of plastic strap across the back of his head. When he turned around, Cherie felt real, true, intense fear. James wore a white mask with black slits for his eyes. Black lines ran down from both eyes to the chin. There was just a small bump for a nose and no mouth hole. When he looked at her, he cocked his head to the side as if studying her. Hello, Cherie. James laughed. How did he know her real name? Were they that famous? Cherie tried to strain against the straps which held her. They held her tight, and there was no going anywhere. My sister and I knew who you were the moment you walked into our house. James turned back around to his table. Cherie heard the soft clinking of metal. We weren't expecting you, of course. We keep the lights on and hope someone ends up off the trail, perhaps lost and looking for a warm light in a window. You'd be surprised how often it happens. Even more so at how often it's a couple. Lovers. Cherie looked straight up. All she could see was an intense light as bright as the sun. She looked left. Smooth concrete walls. She could see just a fraction of the floor, but it was smooth concrete as well. Cherie felt around the table with her hand the best she could. It was smooth metal for sure, but there was also an odd channel along both sides. Not very wide or deep, but there was one on each side. Why are you doing this? She asked, trying to keep her voice calm. James didn't bother to turn around this time. Why do you and Beau do what you do? Cherie was confused for a moment. We love each other. So you slaughter entire families in one night because of love? James laughed, the sound strange and echoey through the mask. I want to know why you killed a mother, father, and 2 kids. Why did you slaughter your own family? My father was abusing me. Cherie couldn't stop her eyes from darting around. It was so dark outside of the cone of light created by the lamp above her head, and she searched for something to offer hope. My mother let it happen. James stood up straight again. When he turned around, he held something shiny in his hand. Then why did you kill your brother and sister? Cherie opened her mouth to speak, but couldn't find the words. She licked her lips. Because it was fun. It was the first time she had admitted it. She could remember her brother and sister trying to get away from her clawed, bloody hands, screaming, crying, begging. It had been such a rush for her. She felt powerful for the first time in her life. When Cherie saw herself in their eyes, she saw someone to be feared, not the tiny girl her father liked to touch or hit depending on how much he had to drink. There's the truth. James stepped forward. Cherie saw he held a large needle in his hand. I like hearing the truth. My sister and I agree with that sentiment. We enjoy it too, but we're connoisseurs. You and Beau seem to want to shoot the entire world in some insane orgy of violence. Tell me, what do you imagine the end result of your spree will be? At some point, the police will catch up to you. Will there be a roadblock, some grand shootout where you and your love died in a hail of bullets? No, we're going to South America. We're getting away. Please, let me go. Let us go and we'll leave. She suddenly realized Beau was not in the room with her. Wait, where's Beau? James walked toward the end of the table where her feet were. Oh, Beau is having playtime with my sister. She has the attic as her playroom. I got the basement. She likes animals and decorating. I prefer to keep things clean and neat. He paused, as if thinking. Mostly. James ran his hand down her right leg. It was then Cherie realized he was wearing black vinyl gloves on each hand. The weird sensation went down her leg, over her knee. He paused at the ankle where the strap held her, then continued to touch her bare foot all the way to the toe. Cherie shivered against the table. It was like being touched by a slug. Now, Cherie, I need more truth from you. You know the police have the borders blocked. There's no way for you and Beau to get out of the country. Tell me the real ending to your story. Cherie felt like throwing up. She wanted to scream. I don't know. James made an odd sound behind his mask. It took a moment for Cherie to realize he was making tisk-tisk sounds. Well then, this is really going to hurt, he said, his English accent so smooth and almost soothing. But that's okay. Pain purifies. You can find a lot of truth in pain. Cherie cried out. James's hand clutched her foot harder, his fingers like a vice. Wait, please! Then the real pain started, and all words were lost to her. Beau managed to hold on to consciousness, but he pretended he had fainted. The pain had been almost unbearable, but he had a few secrets this psycho bitch couldn't possibly have known about. The first was Beau had a tendency to be a lot stronger than he looked. When he was out of his leather jacket and not carrying all of his guns to help bulk up, he was wiry and almost skinny. However, his life had always been about fighting, whether it was his father or the kids in his neighborhood and school. This had done something to him, causing him to develop an almost superhuman ability to tap into the adrenaline his body created. He just had to think about it for a moment, and the chemical flooded him, making him even stronger. The second thing was his father used to do something similar to him when he was younger. When Beau had been small, unable to fight, his father would hold him down and burn him with cigarettes or lit matches. Sometimes his father tied him down and beat him with belts as punishment for small, big, or non-existent transgressions. Most of the time, Beau figured his father just enjoyed beating him. This had caused Beau to build up an incredible tolerance for pain. Although the needles under his fingernails were excruciating and he had allowed himself to scream, he also turned back to his old mental method of dealing with it. He strained against the bonds which held him, letting the adrenaline flow, and he mentally distanced himself from what was happening. He felt it, but distantly, as if it were happening to someone else. Just now, he feigned his fainting spell. Lily stepped away, pleased with herself. Beau let his chin drop to his chest, even allowing some spittle to trail down to his t-shirt. In fact, he was very aware of what was happening, just needing a moment to gather himself. He cracked open his eyes. He needed to assess what he had to work with. First, Lily had inserted the needles, moved them around beneath each fingernail on his right hand, then removed each one. Blood ran from the small holes, and trying to move his fingers brought fresh waves of pain. Fine, he could deal with it until the blood stopped and the pain faded. So far, she had not started on his left hand. Second, his straining against the leather straps had caused a tear to form in the one holding down his right hand. It was small, but it wouldn't take much more to cause the tear to widen, extend, and then snap. The other thing was, his straining against the chest strap had caused it to loosen a bit. He pushed himself against it so Lily wouldn't notice, but he already had more freedom to move within. She had severed no body parts. That was good. He was in pain, but he could still walk, still breathe, still see and hear. His right hand was brutalized, but no broken bones. Time to assess the rest of the situation. These two were obviously insane. The brother and sister team were evidently killers who enjoyed torturing their victims to death. Of all the fucking luck. he thought. "Ah, I see you've come round." He had opened his eyes a bit too far. Damn it, he couldn't afford to make mistakes like that. "You and your brother are psychos," he spat, trying to keep his voice defiant but quiet, as if she'd weakened him. If he had any chance at all of getting out of this, he had to convince her he was weakening. "Hello, Kettle. This is Pot. You're black," Lily said and laughed. "I don't know what the fuck you're talking about." Lily sighed. "Do you have any education at all? I mean, you are in a fine position to tell me I'm crazy. You and your little girlfriend have been psychotically murdering entire families or innocent couples on the side of the road for days. Who's the psycho here?" Beau looked into her eyes. He could just barely see them behind the mask, blinking at him. "Fine, that we're both psychos, but what the fuck is this? Why are you doing this?" He leaned forward, pressing hard against the loosened chest strap. Beau heard the leather creaking. He also did his best to flex his right hand, cautiously, subtly. "Why? You dare to ask why? Remember what I asked you before we started? How did it feel? You know, killing feels good. You just have no refinement. My brother and I, well, we've been raised to enjoy and savor the finest things in life. To enjoy great food, paintings, literature, wine. You want to rush, get the thrill, then move on. The problem is your high wears off too fast, so you have to do it again and again. Your way leads to you and Cherie dying in a storm of bullets along some dusty road by the police." "You still haven't answered my question." "I do it for fun, dear boy. This is fun." She bent down to look him in the eyes. He saw into the mask's eye holes, and there was something bright and intense, like tiny stars blazing away in those pupils. Something beyond the rage he and Cherie felt. Was it really madness, or had they moved on to something entirely different? Had they gone beyond human emotions? "Now, you've had your chance to rest, Beau. Should we continue?" Lily stood up and walked back to her workbench. She was behind Beau now, and no matter how he turned his head, he couldn't see what she was doing. "Have you ever played a game where you cut off the oxygen supply and then allow it to come back? Just as you or the person you are suffocating start to pass out, you let the air rush back in. I hear it's quite a rush." Beau used the moment to flex his right hand again. This time he could see the tear grow. He pushed again against the strap on his chest. He felt the buckle behind the chair give just a bit. Then the plastic bag came down over his head, and Lily forced his head back against the chair. All the air was gone, and he was suffocating. Cherie's voice was nearly gone. She had never screamed so much in her life and had never known such pain before. At this point, she was certain her right foot was mangled beyond all recognition. She had stopped studying James a while ago, trying to figure out what he was doing. She had ceased pleading with him to stop what he was doing, too. "Lovely." James walked back to the table, still holding the long metal spike in his hand. The tip dripped with blood. "You have a lovely voice. I think you are close to rupturing your vocal cords, however. We'll have to give you a bit of a rest right now, I think." Cherie couldn't respond. Instead, she just started to cry, great, heaving sobs. She felt the hot tears run down her face and into her ears. Yes, let it out." James came over to the table and bent to look at her. She saw his bright, intense eyes behind the mask. He seemed very pleased. "Let out your emotions. We'll get to the core of you yet." "Why are you doing this?" Cherie's voice was little more than a ragged whisper. "For the same reason you do." James laughed, standing up straight and returning to his workbench. "My sister and I had a very distinguished upbringing, but it was also cloistered. We were kept in the house, no friends. My father was always away, and we were always a bit of a disappointment to him regardless. We both did well in school, but we're not outstanding. The fact was, we just preferred to be with each other instead of having friends at school, playing sports, or joining clubs. He moved down the bench. Despite the tears, Cherie could see him lovingly touching things there. She couldn't see any of the other tools, but when he moved some of them, they cast reflections on the wall. They were all metal and reflecting the bright lights. She could imagine there were other blades, sharp things, saws. I suppose my mother and father thought we were strange. I think that's why he moved us here. Why he decided to move this entire castle, I have no idea. It took a long time, and Lily and I just got closer and closer. We were each other's best friends. I tried the marriage thing, thinking it would please my father, but it didn't take. He laughed. Cherie imagined what this might mean. She imagined his wife on a table like this, slowly torn to pieces. I do this because it's been a hobby since I was young. Yes, I started with animals, but humans are so much better. I love the sounds humans make. They always start pleading. They try to tell me I don't have to do this, as if I don't already know that. I do it anyway, because it's my hobby. I do it because when I am doing this, I am finally whole. He turned around to face her again. Why do you kill people? Cherie shook her head. I don't know, I swear, I just did it. First it was my father. I was angry at him for the things he did to me when I was younger and what he kept doing to me once I was a teenager. I just wanted to strike back, and Bo showed me how. James nodded, put one finger to his chin as if thinking. But why kill your brother and sister? Why kill children from the family you murdered before you came to our house? When it happens, there's no stopping it. For a moment, the pain faded to something in the background. Cherie felt the anger building inside of her now, and there was always a switch which got thrown when she was ready to kill. She could see herself smashing James's head into the bench, then taking a saw to his neck. When it happens, there's just anger and rage. It's like the world turns bright red and all I can see is death. Like I can look him in the face and see death. He looks back at me and tells me to keep going. There's power there, and I need to eat it like someone eats lunch. James laughed. Exactly. You want to know why we do this. You have your answer. James turned back to his tools for a fraction of a second. Then he turned back around. He held what appeared to be a scalpel in his right hand. Cherie was still in the zone where she went when the anger hit her. She knew from that point forward she would not give him the pleasure he wanted. Whatever he did, she was going to stay here in this dark, warm place where she liked to bathe in blood and screams. Let's see what happens when we start to take some skin off of you. James laughed, flashed the blade of the scalpel in the light. Does that sound like fun? Cherie just stared at him coldly. She didn't cry, she didn't scream or plead. James looked almost disappointed, but he stepped up to the table and put a hand on her right arm. Slowly, well within her view, he brought the scalpel down. Cherie saw it draw a red line as he began to cut away a small square of her flesh. She didn't scream. Instead, she imagined James's head exploding along with the mask he wore. It would be so joyous to shoot him point blank with her shotgun. She had made friends with death, so either he would find a way to get her out of here to kill these people, or she'd die. Either outcome was fine with Cherie. James continued his work. As he did so, he began to whistle softly behind his mask. Bo lost track of time entirely. How many times had Lily put the bag over his head, pressed it hard against his face? Each time he would strain against his bonds, but then the lack of air would cause him to weaken and then pass out. She seemed delighted by his stamina. You are remarkable, Bo, she said, removing the bag, walking back to her workbench. Most people get so weak from this they can barely keep their head up after just a few times. Your ability to recover is a wonder. I am having ever so much fun. Fuck you, bitch, he thought. He looked to his right hand and strained against his bond. The strap snapped, and his right hand was free. He looked over his shoulder to see what she was doing. Lily had her head down, studying her tools, perhaps trying to find the next thing with which to torture him. Beau reached across and unfastened his left hand. He moved as stealthily as possible, trying not to make any noise. I think I need to get something from the other room, Lily said as Beau froze. She stepped out of the room, not once casting a glance his way. Perfect. Moving fast now, Beau shifted his entire body, slid down his upper half, then pushed against the strap with both hands. The agony in his right hand burned bright, but he pushed it down deep. The strap slid up and over his head. He breathed a sigh of relief, then leaned down, fiddled with the straps on his ankles. For a panicked moment, he was unsure if he'd be able to get the straps undone. He closed his eyes, forced himself to calm down, listened for Lily's footsteps, then opened them to find the buckles and undo his ankles. Beau stood up. His back cracked and the world swam around him for a moment. He bent down, his head between his knees, breathing. When he stood up, he saw Lily standing in the doorway. He could not see her face because of the mask, but he was sure he'd surprised her. Remarkable, Lily whispered. She charged at him like a wild animal. She held a scalpel in her right hand and it flashed in the light. Beau had planned to find a weapon from her table of tools, but there was no time. She covered the ground between them in seconds, the entire time making a growling, shrieking, inhuman sound. Beau stepped away from the chair, bent down, and charged at her. He caught her beneath the arm holding the scalpel, then up into her chest. Screaming his own battle cry, he hefted her into the air, then carried her forward until she slammed into the wall. He heard the scalpel clatter across the floor. Lily clawed at him. Her fingernails dug furrows on his face, down his neck, and across his arms. He was only wearing a white t-shirt and jeans instead of his leather jacket, which was his armor. She drew blood, and the scratches were deep. Soon, rivers of blood ran down his face, neck, and arms. Beau screamed again with pure rage. He slammed Lily's head against the wall where it made a satisfying crack. Then he put his hand behind her head and slammed her face into the workbench. The mask burst apart as he did so. When he let go, Lily slid down like a sack of wet rags to the floor. Beau flipped her over, and she was bleeding from the nose, mouth, and a wound on her head. She moaned. Where's Cherie? He held her up to stare into his face. Wake the fuck up, bitch. Where's Cherie? Lily moaned and slowly shook her head. Basement. Beau wanted to strangle her. He wanted to repeatedly slam her head into the floor until her skull cracked open and he could feel her brains in his hands. He wanted to find something on her hellish workbench to stab her until all of her guts fell out. But he knew Cherie was several floors down, probably being slowly torn to pieces right now. Instead, Beau slammed her head into the floor once more, then ran. He had no idea where he was running, but through a doorway was another room. This held a rocking chair and table and shelves filled with what looked like body parts floating in jars. There was a head held to the wall by barbed wire, mixed with more brightly colored birds. Christ! Beau reached the door, opened it, and was down a hallway in seconds. He ran to the right out of instinct, got lucky, and found a set of stairs. Then he ran down those and burst through a door at the bottom. Now he was in an opulent hall with thick carpeting and paintings on the walls. There were doors on either side of him containing rooms he dare not think about. Cherie! I'm coming! On he ran, hoping he was in time. Lily opened her eyes. She laughed, then wiped at the blood running down her face. When she saw the bright crimson on her fingers, she licked the tips. Delicious. He had done it. One of the few. She knew when she saw him, Beau would be different. He would be one of the best. She got to her feet. The blows to the head had made her slightly woozy, but the excitement was too great. Lily picked up a phone receiver on the wall, dialed 3 numbers, and waited. James picked up. "He's out. He's coming."
"Oh my,"
James replied.
"how delightful."
Lily put the phone back, then grabbed her scalpel from the floor. She also grabbed a cleaver from the bench. These were her favorite tools. "Ready or not, here I come." She muttered to the room, then laughed again. She was off a second later, moving with ungodly speed. Nothing about the upper floor made any sense, Beau found out pretty quickly. He just ran around and around, overlooking a grand hallway. It looked like there should have been stairs, but when you got to the spot where the stairs should have been, there was just another wall. No door, just a wall. "We've redesigned the place a little." Beau looked around, but couldn't see Lily. Her voice echoed around the grand hall, across the marble. Her voice was soft and teasing, almost sensual. "Fuck you!" The echoes went on and on after he shouted. Beau ran to the first door he saw, turned the doorknob, and flung the door wide. Inside was dark, thick curtains covering the walls. It was an elaborate bedroom. The furniture looked old, covered with a thin layer of dust. Sitting at a dressing table, one hand up to her hair, was a thin woman. From the doorway, Beau couldn't see her reflection in the mirror. He took a further step into the room. "Hey, lady, hey, can you hear me?" Fear clutched at his throat and the words dried up. Suddenly, the smell of the room slammed down against him. He reached for the wall beside the door until he finally found a light switch. Overhead, the chandelier cast a yellowish glow across the room. Beau realized there was a man in the bed, covers up to his chin. He was definitely dead, his skin ancient and wrinkled as if he had been mummified. The woman at the dressing table was also quite dead, skeletal. Her empty eye sockets stared back at Beau via the mirror's reflection. Jesus. Beau ran through the room fast, opening closets and other doors. He found nothing resembling a staircase. He ran out of the room, across the hallway, to another door. He ripped this one open and found what appeared to be a child's room. There was a gigantic dollhouse against one wall. The wallpaper was pink. There was a 4-poster bed with a canopy. Strung up in front of the dollhouse by wires from the ceiling was the corpse of a little girl dressed in pink. She was wasted away too, but also preserved like a mummy. She wore a pink dress with an equally pink bow in her hair. She held a doll in one skeleton hand. Beau felt his gorge rise as he ran through the room. Finally, at the far end, he opened a closet and discovered a hallway. At the end of the hall was a set of stairs. He ran down them, his feet muffled on the carpeting, until he reached another door. He pushed this door open, and there he was in the grand hall. Marble replaced the carpeting beneath his feet. "Thank Christ," he said. Just across the hall, maybe 50 yards away, was the castle's front door. He and Cherie had seen a glimpse of this hall from the foyer when they were let inside the night before. Suddenly, through another archway, Cherie burst through. She was wearing just her bra and panties. She limped, trying to keep her right foot from hitting the floor as much as she could. Blood ran from her right arm and hand. Her hair hung around her face in sweaty strands. "Beau!" she screamed. "Cherie!" Beau returned the cry. That was when Lily came out of the darkness. Minutes before Cherie burst into the grand hall, while Beau was running in circles around the upper floor trying to find a door, James turned to Cherie. He laughed. "It seems your boyfriend has changed the rules of the game." He reached for the straps on her arm, began unbuckling them. He did her right arm first, which was on fire, coated in blood from the flaying he had done there. Beau's a strong one, but we've had many powerful men here before. One by one, he undid the straps until there was nothing holding her down. James backed away from the table, arms held out to his sides. You can run now. If you head through the doorway here, you'll find a metal door. Open it and run up the stairs. Be careful. The halls are dark. The rooms are large, but if you can keep running straight, you'll find yourself in the front hall. The door is there. I did not lock it. Cherie looked at him strangely, sure it was a trick. She was afraid to raise her head. It's true. You can go. Well, to be honest, what you get is a head start. James turned back to his table, rummaged for a moment. When he turned back around, he held a double-headed axe. The head shone in the light. James liked polished things, evidently. Now, go. Cherie sat up, looking at this man, sure he was just going to swing the axe and cut her in two. She swung her legs over the side of the table and descended to the floor. Agony shot up her right leg where he had been working with the needle. Careful with your foot. James laughed. Cherie hobbled towards the doorway. She kept her eye on him. She was ready to fight, however, if he came at her. Cherie would bite, tear, and fight until the last if she had to. Hurry. James laughed again. Run! When he screamed, Cherie hobbled faster. She reached the metal door, twisted the handle, opened it with a loud metallic creak. Outside was a concrete hallway leading off to the right. There were other metal doors, but Cherie could see stairs at the far end and headed towards them. Blood fell from her right hand like rain, leaving a perfect trail, but she didn't care. Nothing mattered but the stairs. Tears coursed down her face. Her breath hitched in her chest. Dimly above her, she heard yelling. Was that Beau's voice? Beau! She tried to scream back to him, but her voice was shot because of the screaming she had done. She reached the stairs, grabbed the metal handrail, and began miserably climbing up the concrete steps and sad, lurching steps, which threatened to topple her back down at any second. Hurry! She heard James scream back down the hall behind her. I'm going to be coming soon. Hurry! Cherie pulled and stepped her way up the stairs, her breath screeching in and out of her lungs. The panic was constant, and the strain of trying to walk in such a way was unbearable. The pain was ever present. She looked down at her right hand and barely recognized it as part of her body. It was red, raw, skinned, flayed. She could see muscles working as she gripped the handrail. Her right foot was one constant sheet of stabbing agony up her legs. She made it to the top of the stairs, just as James reached the bottom below. She looked down and saw he was there, axe in hand, his mask off. The handsome face she had seen when they first got here was gone. At the bottom of the stairs now was a man with a maniacal grin, his hair a mess, his body covered in blood, including splatters across his face. James's lips were red, which Cherie guessed meant he had put his fingers in a puddle of her blood and touched it to his mouth. Hello, Cherie. Cherie tried to scream, but her vocal cords would not permit it. What came out was a scratchy shriek. She pushed through the door and was immediately lost in darkness beyond. The room was cavernous. She held out her hands in front of her, unsure of where the walls were. It took a moment for her eyes to adjust, and she realized it was a massive library. There were chairs, a desk, and walls of bookshelves, thick carpets, more works of art on the walls. A man in a suit sat in one of the chairs, his head cocked oddly to one side. There was a book in his hands. Cherie jumped when she realized there was someone else within the room, the shadows so thick she wasn't sure if he was a threat. Cherie studied the odd sight for a moment as she limped her way past the chair. When she got close, she realized the man was a skeleton dressed in a suit. The empty eye sockets stared at her as if warning her, but the grinning teeth seemed to be laughing at her efforts to stay alive, to escape. Tears flowed down her face. When Cherie turned her head, she saw another skeleton. This one dressed with an enormous hat and a yellow dress. In fact, most of the couches and chairs had someone sitting in it, all dressed, all old, and in various states of decay. "Oh my God," she moaned. She moved as fast as her foot would let her. She crossed the room and pushed through a door. On the other side was a large, long wooden table. Cherie couldn't even count the number of chairs there. Plates lined either side, complete with silverware. A skeletal child sat in one chair. Another man sat at the head of the table, this one gray, with flesh still attached. A headless body in a dress sat halfway down the table. "Did you stop and say hello to Daddy, Cherie?" James called from behind her, and he giggled a high-pitched laugh. "Or did you stop by to say hello to Granny? Maybe Mom? The entire family's here, you see, plus the guests we've had over the years. So many. You'd be surprised how many people stop by for dinner." He giggled again. Cherie tried to walk past the table, but her foot was not having any more of this. She cried out and held on to one of the chairs for support. She could hear James's footsteps behind her, steady, unhurried. He was sure he was going to catch her and was taking his time. He was enjoying this. He said he had done this before, she thought. Cherie pulled out one of the chairs. She sat down in front of the place setting at the far end of the room. The shadows were deeper here. She sat still, her hand on either side of the plate, and cocked her head to the side and hoped she would look like just another body, fresher than most, but perhaps lost in the shadows. James entered the room, still giggling, his breath raspy and excited. He looked around the room with wide, unblinking eyes. "Cherie?" he called out. "Did you stop to have a bite to eat?" He laughed again. Somewhere within the mansion there was more shouting. The words were still indistinct, but Lily's voice stood out from the din. Cherie was sure she heard a deeper baritone, which was her beau. James turned his head fast, his sweaty hair flying away from his skull. He looked like a wild animal. "Lily?" he asked the room. Cherie held still. She tried to stifle her breathing, but it was hard. Every time she tried to hold her breath, the room swam around her and her vision blurred. "Still," she thought. "Remain still." She watched him out of the corner of her eye. "I'm coming, Lily," James called out. She saw him walk towards one of the walls, heard what must have been some kind of hidden door creak open. He was out of view from her eyes, but she held her head steady, her body rigid. Cherie did her best to listen, trying to spot his footsteps as James stepped out of the room. Then she heard the door close behind him. Still, she sat there, trying to stay silent for a moment longer. Had it worked? Had he ignored her when the shouting started? It might have, but Beau was out there, and now both siblings were after him. Cherie moved, turning a bit. The axe came down on her right hand. It happened so fast, she didn't even realize what had happened. She saw movement. She saw a white shirt right behind her. Something whooshed past her face, and there was a loud crash into the table to her right. Her fingers were severed at the second knuckle. The axe so sharp and the cut so clean, she didn't feel it at first. "Gotcha!" James screamed. The pain finally hit, and Cherie let out her own yell, but as she did so, she grabbed one of the forks next to the plates close to her. As the pain washed over her in waves, as the blood from her already bloody hand sprayed across the table, she lunged and stabbed James in the gut with the tines. The look of surprise on his face, followed by his shriek of pain, was the most satisfying thing she had ever witnessed. Cherie threw the switch inside her head, the one she threw every time she turned bloodthirsty. Cherie wasn't even aware it was there until she turned on her father. Beau had already knocked him down, and Cherie advanced on him with a knife, the big man who had turned her life into a nightmare, alternating between blubbering and making limp threats. The world changed inside of her. Instead of seeing people, her family, her siblings, these were just pieces of meat, sad, bleeding animals for her to do with what she wanted. She felt no attachment to these things before her anymore. Instead, she felt a huge, endless well of anger inside of her. It was like images she had seen in movies of volcanoes, just a placid, calm, beautiful mountain until it suddenly exploded into hot, red, burning lava. Cherie began stabbing and slicing her father until hot blood covered her, and the thing at her feet was no longer recognizable as human. Her father was obscenely still alive, so Bo took care of that. But then Cherie turned to her brother and sister. They all wanted to know why. The news people wanted to know why she killed her siblings. Even these crazies wanted to know why they had done it. Cherie would not have been able to articulate it. The rage, the lava, the bubbling hatred inside of her was too strong. The pyroclastic flow of a volcano didn't stop to go around the kids in their way, did it? It did not. The avalanche of hot, burning, suffocating ash just barreled down the mountain, destroying everything in its path. Cherie was in there now, not seeing them as her brother and sister. She was pure rage, and they were there to vent on. And she did. Right now, James screamed and clutched at the spot in his stomach where she had buried the fork. Cherie reached back to the place settings and grabbed another. Before James could get the first fork out of his stomach, she began stabbing him in the chest and shoulders with the next. James continued to shriek. It was a steady, high-pitched sound which rose and rose to the point Cherie was sure all the windows would shatter. Blood spattered across his white shirt and across the table. She felt fresh blood across her face, her lips turned into a snarl. She wanted to keep stabbing and stabbing until he was dead, but she heard Bo's voice again. Always Bo was the one who could cut through the rage and the haze. He was the one who could cause the switch to go back to the normal setting. Bo was her savior, and he was in trouble. Cherie clutched her fork and charged at James, who was still shrieking. She threw her entire body weight against his midsection and shoved him aside. A second later, she opened the hidden door in the wall and stepped into the bright hallway beyond. She turned right. As she ran down the hall, the pain in her right foot faded into the background so far as to disappear. When the switch got thrown, the adrenaline kicked in hard and it pushed all the pain away. There was just the rage, the lava. Cherie looked down at her ruined right hand. Blood flowed in a steady stream from the stumps of her fingers. Some of the areas James had sliced up were clotting, but everything from the elbow down was a mass of red gore and exposed muscle. Behind her, she heard the door to the dining room smash open. James staggered into the hall behind her.
"There she is,"
he screamed, the sound echoing off the high walls.
"There she is at last."
Cherie saw the end of the hall. Beyond it was the bright hallway they had just glimpsed upon entering this nightmare castle. She could hear yelling from there and knew Bo was there, perhaps calling for her. Just a few more feet. Something behind her made a loud crash. This caused her to turn her head, and she saw James randomly swinging his axe left and right. The head buried itself in the wall. He wrenched it free with minimal effort, his shirt covered in an ever-spreading field of gore, and kept coming after her. He was smiling.
"There she is,"
he screamed again. Cherie stumbled and nearly fell. She reached out instinctively with her right hand to catch the wall and stop herself from falling. This time, the pain shot through the adrenaline and she screamed as if shocked. She fell to her knees, leaving a bloody streak across the wall. Cherie got to her feet, and she heard another loud crash behind her as James continued to swing his axe, but this time, she focused on the finish line. If she could meet up with Bo, they could handle these two crazies. They would be near the front door. Her bare feet touched cold marble, and she was in the bright hall. There he was at the far end, looking baffled, angry, and out of breath. Her heart leaped in her chest, and she felt overwhelming love for this man who had saved her from a life of nothing.
"Bo!"
She screamed, despite the damage done to her vocal cords, so raspy and shredded, but echoing throughout the hall. Bo looked right at her and smiled. Then, something came out of the dark shadows on one side of the staircase, moving so fast it was just a blur of color. It took several seconds for Cherie to realize it was a human being. Lily. She was on Bo in a flash.
No!
Lily hit Bo with her full weight while running at full speed. Bo instinctively wrapped both arms around her, and he felt his feet lift off the ground. There was pain in his hand, and she had exhausted him from use of the plastic bag. When he hit the marble floor, he felt one of his ribs snap. In a flash, Lily was on her knees, pressing Bo to the floor. Her right hand moved in a blur. He barely felt the scalpel stab him in the left shoulder, chest, side of his head, left arm. Had he really seen Cherie? She looked like something out of a nightmare. Had she been bleeding from her right arm? Where was James? Bo punched Lily in the side of her head with his right hand. He screamed at the pain which followed. Lily screamed too, falling to the side, but also releasing her from her impossibly strong grip. Bo reached for the hand with the scalpel, but she was so fast it was like trying to hold on to an eel, one that bit. The slices across his palm sprayed more blood across Lily's face. She smiled, but kept slashing. Bo got lucky and caught her wrist. Snarling, Bo headbutted her in the forehead. Lily's eyes went cross, and she backed away, slipped on the blood-soaked marble floor, and fell hard. Bo took immense satisfaction when her skull bounced off the marble. Bo wanted to kill her. He didn't realize he was growling until James spoke. "There they are, both of them. There they are, sis." Bo turned slowly as the world wobbled around him. James stood between him and Cherie with his axe in hand. His hair hung down over his eyes, and there was a twisted smile across his face. Blood smeared his shirt, dripped from his lower lip. His tongue darted out like a lizard's.
What the fuck are you talking about?
Bo asked. "Your true selves. There they are. The mask you wear and have worn your entire life was the normal person you pretended to be. The Bo and Cherie who pretended to be a good guy and girl, respectively. The people who wore masks as invisible as the real ones my sister and I wore. How much of your lives did you try to pretend you weren't what stands before me right now? Killers, murderers, monsters. The beast has finally been set free within both of you." Bo looked down at his hands. There was blood in every line of his hand, beneath every fingernail, but he didn't know which of it was his and which was Lily's. The coppery smell filled the air. When he licked his lips, he could taste it. He couldn't help but smile, just a bit. Yes, the lunatic was right. This was who he really was. He loved it. He needed it. He turned his head and saw Cherie. She wavered on her feet as if swaying in a breeze, unable to stand still, her eyes half closed. Blood ran freely from her ruined right arm and hand. Something was wrong with her right foot because it looked swollen, and he saw bloody footprints behind her. "Cherie?" She came around for a moment and saw him. She smiled, but then she saw James standing there with an axe. Her face changed, her lips pulled back, and her teeth flashed. She snarled like something feral. "See? There she is." James laughed. Behind James, Lily got to her feet. She laughed too. "Aren't they beautiful, brother?" "Indeed they are." "Just let us go. What's wrong with you two? You're deranged." Bo studied them, James holding his axe like it was the most natural thing in the world, while Lily stood behind him with her fingers twisted into claws. "Really? Is that really what you want? What happens when you head out that door, Bo? You put your masks on again? Do you think you'll make it across the border to some fantasy life in South America? You know how this ends. It ends either in a hail of bullets from the police Or you two end up in jail, and after endless appeals which go nowhere, you end up dead at the end of a needle. At least this way you die with a bit of dignity. You can become part of our home. You can die as you truly are. Bo felt actual fear for the first time. There was nothing sane behind this man's eyes. It made him wonder what his eyes looked like to the people he killed. Did he transform into something similar, with blood in his eyes and inhuman glare on his face? You're sick. You and your fucking sister. Sick. Twisted. And you're not? Lily asked. You looked people in the eye and killed them time and again. How many? We have refined taste here and take our time to turn people into art. Our mission is to make them their true selves. What about you two? Monsters, just striking out and killing randomly. No reason, no plan. Here, you have purpose. I don't understand, Cherie said. What do you want? We want you to be what the world made you to be. James turned his demented eyes from Cherie to Bo and back again. Here, with us. Bo bunched his hands into fists. Without thinking, he ran toward James. He was going to grab the axe, then the little shit around his throat. Lily would probably come up behind him and start stabbing him, but he was going to keep squeezing this little son of a bitch's neck until it cracked beneath his fingers. Cherie saw Bo lunge at James and knew this was the wrong move. They weren't getting out of here. Whatever these two siblings were, she was certain they weren't human. They wore masks, but the masks were actually their true selves. They were blank. These two were monsters out of a fever dream, blank-faced, turning and turning and killing and killing. Cherie realized she and Bo were nothing compared to them. James and Lily had been going on and on at this for a long time. They were experts. Cherie and Bo were kids, barely able to walk yet. No! She tried to scream, but her voice was gone. What came out was a squeak. She realized in that moment she loved Bo. She'd never thought about it before, but he was in her heart. Bo was everything she needed and the only thing she wanted. Together, perhaps they could control the beast within them. It was unlikely they would find that utopia they talked about, but there was the slimmest of chances. James saw Bo coming and laughed. He stepped aside, then drew back his axe. Bo screamed, his hands hooked into claws. James let out his own scream, which Lily mimicked as she held an expression of genuine joy on her face. James swung his axe and caught Bo directly in the midsection. Cherie felt it from across the room. The blow was hard and deep. Blood erupted from the wound and sprayed the floor once more. Bo grabbed James's neck, but his fingers found no purchase, and the lunatic slipped out of Bo's grasp. Bo stopped, clutched at his stomach. He turned around, stared Cherie in the face, a look of shock and sadness plastered across his countenance. James brought the axe down against Bo's neck, buried deep into his shoulder at the exact point where his head connected to his body. It nearly severed his head entirely. James pulled the axe away, and the spray was dark, red, and wet. Bo's eyes were wide as he clutched at his throat, unable to contain the steady flow. No! Cherie never saw Lily. She only realized the sister had vanished from her brother's side when she came up behind her and sliced her left arm. It was a single, brutal, deep cut from underneath her arm, down, then across. It was a quick sting. Then the blood came in steady pulses which matched her heartbeat. The blood she saw was as thick and dark as Bo's. The two lovers stared at each other. Cherie took one soft, staggering step toward Bo, then another. The world flew away from her and her entire field of view narrowed to a single dark tunnel with Bo at the end. The siblings vanished. The house vanished. Bo's eyes became fixed and glassy. No, she whispered. Wait. She had to catch up with him. Dimly, she heard her life's blood spattering against the floor. She nearly fell, caught herself, and continued her walk. Just a few more feet. She could feel herself slipping away, but she bit down on her lower lip, and the pain brought her back for just a moment. Cherie was almost there. She sank to her knees, crawled the last few feet. One hand touched Beau's leg. She curled up next to him, her dress instantly soaked in his blood. "Beau," she whispered, put his limp arm around her, and laid her head on his chest. The world swam away. As the last of her life drained to nothing, Cherie realized she had never been so happy in all her life. James and Lily sat together on the ornate sofa in the sitting room. It was a vast room, kept mostly empty, just for themselves. It was late the next day, and the two had spent the entire day moving the bodies, cleaning up the hallway and their respective work areas. Then, the two stood naked before each other and washed, cleaned, dressed their wounds. James had quite a few deep stab wounds from the fork. Cherie had really gone to town on him. None of them were life-threatening, other than being potential areas of infection. Some of the wounds still bled despite the bandages. Lily didn't have as many lacerations, but both were slightly worried about her having a concussion. Beau had smashed her head several times. Now they sat on the sofa, wearing just robes. James had his feet up on the coffee table, while Lily lay on the sofa with her wounded head in his lap. This was the time they enjoyed the most. The post-kill time was the best, to sit and ruminate and enjoy the afterglow. The ending was really quite romantic, Lily opined. Yes, once we tore down their masks and they became their true selves, I think they both realized they only had each other. In so many ways, they were a bit like us. Lily moaned. Just unfocused. Perhaps we could have taught them. Lily chuckled. They were so untamed. I have a hard time believing we'd be able to control them. We could barely contain them as is. True. I like that we put them in the dining room, too. It looks like they're enjoying a fine dinner together. We'll fill that room up nicely if we keep getting visitors. Lily sighed. How long can we keep going, brother? How long do you think? We've been doing this for quite some time, sister. I think we can manage a while longer. What about those two? They're being sought by police. James thought about this for a moment. Tomorrow morning, you and I will go for a drive. I'll have to wear gloves and a mask, but we'll drive their car 50 or so miles from here. I'll push it down an embankment or something, someplace which looks random, but the police should be able to find it. We'll clean out the inside, then come back here. Remember, there's literally nothing which can tie them with us. They were spree killers. If we take them far enough away, the cops won't even come asking about them. They will become legend for sure. The authorities will wonder where they went, never to be seen again as they search the world for them. Imagine the true crime specials about them. Lily was tired and sighed loudly, snuggling in a bit. A drive sounds lovely. We haven't been on one in a while. We need to go out more. Perhaps. They sat in silence for a while. Outside, the sun went down, but the lights of the large mansion stayed off. They would stay off until they were ready to attract someone again. The lights always did their job and lured lost people to their homes. Lost people for them to show their true selves before making them part of the collection. I love you, sis. I love you too, baby brother.
In recent news, the car believed to have been stolen by Beau Ivy and his girlfriend, Cherie Berlin, from the Jameson family, was found abandoned today. Police and FBI have been frantically searching for the couple who have murdered 11 people that they know about in a violent cross-country spree starting with the young woman's family. There was no sign of the couple, and the car appeared to have been cleaned out. Weapons were found in the back of the car, but authorities wish to stress the couple should be considered armed and very dangerous. Where the couple might have gone is still debated. There have been no reports of other missing people, murders, or stolen vehicles. The area where the vehicle was found was very remote, and so far, no further clues have been revealed by authorities. Police state there was no blood or signs of a crime found within the car. As far as anyone knows, the couple is still alive and potentially dangerous. They are not to be approached, and if you spot the couple, report it immediately to law enforcement.
Poor Beau and Cherie. They learned too late that there are other things to treasure in this world than killing and murder. In the end, they learned their love for each other had deeper meaning than the thrill of the kill. These lessons are often learned the hard way, particularly when the sun goes down. You know, when the night comes out. You've been listening to When the Night Comes Out, a weekly horror anthology podcast with stories by Bryan W. Alaspa and narrated by Allie James. For Bryan's work, visit his website at www.bryanwalaspa.com or visit amazon.com for his books of fiction and nonfiction. Be sure to listen to Allie's work on Facebook at Allie James Projects.